All right, everybody, welcome back to episode 40. We're going to do our last edition of Hardwood Horns for the 2022-2023 season. Texas falls short in the Elite Eight after a really great season for interim head coach Rodney Terry and all those Hardwood Horns. Let's jump right into the final weekend of Texas basketball. Sweet 16 against Xavier. I think Xavier came into this game pretty hot offensively. They really beat up on their opponent the game before. And so, you know, for me, I was thinking this game against Xavier might be pretty tough in the Sweet 16. Big story of that game outside of the win. Dylan DeSue only played a couple possessions in that game. I guess he injured his foot at some point. I want to say they mentioned he might have injured his foot in the Big 12 tournament or in practice leading up to the NCAA tournament. I guess he re-aggravated the injury in practice leading up to the Sweet 16 game and couldn't go. Despite that, and by the way, Dylan DeSue, just a ton of production in the Big 12 tournament and in the NCAA tournament to that point. Despite that, they go on and win pretty comfortably, 83-71 over Xavier. Bishop stepped up huge in that game. He had almost a double-double of his own, 18 points, 9 boards. Tyrese Horn led the Longhorns with 19 points. One of those games where Texas had a huge lead at the half, 17-point lead over Xavier at the half. Those guards, you know, we talked after the first weekend of the tournament about the guards needing to get hot and stay hot. They played one game where they were super hot, and they played another game where they were just basically super cold, almost completely cold. But the guards got hot again. They were 58% from three. The team altogether shot 52% from the field. So really, really good offensive game against Xavier. And 71 points, I wouldn't call that like a great defensive effort, but it was obviously enough to do the trick. And I think they pestered Xavier enough that they couldn't get their offense going. So now we move on to that Elite Eight matchup with Miami. Texas obviously lost that game 88-81. I think, you know, we talked about DeSue earlier. I think that Texas missed DeSue greatly in this Miami game. We needed more length. We needed more athleticism down low. And honestly, as good as Dylan Mitchell could be as a basketball player, he's not there yet, especially on the offensive end. And so we needed another body that could get us points down low. And obviously he couldn't go in that game. I felt like Miami really pressured the edge of the offense, kind of daring Texas guards to penetrate. And for whatever reason, I don't know if they were unwilling to give it a shot or if the Miami defense was just really good and was cutting everything off. You know, I didn't see what those guys were seeing, but there wasn't a lot of dribble penetration. There was not very many people to get the ball down low. So they took advantage of that and, kept Texas guarded out at the perimeter. In the first half, Texas shot really well in that game, but in the second half just absolutely couldn't do anything from three. Despite all of that, Texas had an 8-point lead at the half. Things were looking really good, and they built that lead up to 13 points early on in the second half of that game, and it looked like they were about to run Miami completely out of the building. And then, man, with about 10 minutes to go, things just completely changed. They were up by 10 with 10 minutes to go. And then I think what really turned the game, and I think Miami tried to do this early on in the second half, and it was working for them to score, but they weren't getting stops on Texas. And so once they started to get some stops against Texas is when you really saw it. They turned this whole game into a one-on-one game, especially in their end of the court offensively. They spread the court out, and basically whoever had the ball in their hands just took it to the basket. And Texas absolutely could not defend it. In fact, not only could they not defend it, they fouled a ton in the process of not being able to defend it. So there was a lot of Texas players in foul trouble. Miami shot just an unreal amount of free throws in this game as a whole, and most of that came in the second half. One of the things that we can always hindsight, and again, I've told you guys, and I'll maintain it. I'm not a basketball strategist by any means, but I kind of wonder why Terry didn't go to more of a zone look late in the second half and maybe throw Dylan Mitchell in the middle of that zone. He is so tall and so long. At the very least, you make Miami have to make some passes and find some open guys for some open shots. It was just way too easy. Their guards just really abused the Texas guards, and they weren't even trying to pass the ball. They come down the court, everybody would spread out, boom, I'm gone to the net. So I don't know if that was like a conscious Miami thing, if that was an adjustment at halftime, or if the players themselves just kind of was like, man, I can just beat these guys off the dribble, and I'll make a shot if they don't foul me. If they do foul me, I'll go to the line and I'll make all my free throws. So I don't know. But the Texas defense just really sort of melted down in that second half. They only allowed 37 points against Miami in the first half, and then 51 points there in the second half. Offensively, Texas went another stretch. We've talked about it multiple times this year. Texas seems to go on these stints, these stretches during the game, and they're long, where they just absolutely do not score. And a lot of times they can come back from that and make plays late and go on a run themselves to either extend the lead or get the lead back and win those games. The deeper you go into this type of tournament against really good teams, you're not going to be able to do that. And they went 7 minutes without a basket in the second half. From the time that, if you watch the game, there was a play sort of close to midway through the second half where they threw an oop to Dylan Mitchell. He threw it down. The crowd was going crazy, and that was like the last bucket they made for forever, like 7 minutes, little over 7 minutes. The three-point shooting, we talked about it, just abysmal in the second half. They were 0 for 5. I think the really interesting thing about this game is not only did Texas go on this really long stretch where they couldn't score a field goal, Miami, with 4 minutes left in the game, didn't score a field goal from then till the end of the game. So from the 4 minute mark on, Miami themselves didn't score a field goal, and they were able to build an 8-point lead. They were able to get the game close and build an 8-point lead in the last 4 minutes, all from the free throw line. A lot of Texas fans are kind of unhappy about that. A lot of Texas fans, and I think just fans in general, even neutral fans on the interwebs were pretty upset with the way that game was officiated. And everybody wants to point towards there was a huge distinction between the amount of free throws Miami made or attempted versus that of Texas. A lot of people thought that the calls were ticky-tacky, and I don't know. I know there was a big play, a big moment in the game with a minute left when the score was tied. Miami was shooting free throws again, and they missed one, and there was a foul that was originally called an offensive foul that would have put their big out of the game, and they overturned it. And I don't know what went into overturning it. Some say they went to the monitor and decided that it was a defensive foul. I guess the other scenario there would have been the referees came together and discussed it and decided to overturn the call, or maybe two different officials called it two different ways and they conversed or went to the monitor to decide who was right. I don't know. It was a big play because again, it gave Miami 2 more shots and they made both those shots to take the lead. Me personally, the whole I hate officials. I think they, and this is just generally speaking, and this is across almost all sports. They find these weird moments to inject themselves into the game. I thought the call in the what was it, FAU or the Creighton and San Diego State game, or Creighton and FAU, I can't remember who played who, but that call at the very end, I mean, there was like 0.2 seconds left on the clock or 2 seconds left on the clock, something like that. I thought that was just a really horrible point in a game to make that call. Not any call. Like a hard foul, absolutely. You know, if someone would have swept his legs out from under him or like completely grabbed his arms to keep him from shooting, yeah, you got to call that. This guy literally had his hand on the side of the shooter. And I really don't think any of the contact that he initiated changed anything about that shot. So that's one example. I don't know about this one. I think Brock Cunningham was whether he was falling or not, I don't know, but he was definitely backing up, went underneath the Miami player. I don't know. To me, that's almost like one of those deals where you say both players kind of fouled. Like he was definitely over the back, but then Brock Cunningham definitely kept pulling his legs out from under him. So I don't know, man. I'm not going to say that's the reason they lost because Texas couldn't find a bucket forever. Texas had ample opportunities in that game to win it. But back to just the overall officiating in the second half, I think the one thing you could say is that the second half was called a little bit closer than the first half. And because of the style of Miami, the way they wanted to dribble, penetrate, and really make it a one-on-one game, that absolutely did favor Miami down the stretch. Again, I'm not trying to take anything away from Miami. That was an amazing effort to come back and even get close, let alone build a huge lead and just really put the game away late like that. So congratulations to Miami. Again, I hate officials. But I don't think Texas lost that game because of the officials. If you're a Texas fan out there, let me know what you think. If you are just a fan of basketball, let me know what you think. If you just hate officials, let me know what you think because we could talk about that. I could do a whole show on how much I hate officials in sports. Rodney Terry. I think, man, Rodney Terry, you look at the body of work for the year. He basically coached this team the entire year. All that incident with Chris Beard happened early in December, and he had to take that team over, and he had to get that team ready for conference play, and he did an amazing job. They almost won the regular season title. They had a couple of hiccups down the stretch that cost them there, but then they went on to just absolutely blow through the Big 12 tournament and started a really good run in the NCAA tournament. I think Rodney Terry has to get credit for a lot of that because despite the fact that this team was really experienced, you still have to have that single source of leadership, and he provided that. I think the team changed. Chris Beard is a big time defensive guy, and all he really cares about is hustling your ass off on defense, and that will create your offense for you. I felt like as the year progressed, we started to see a shift in the Texas offense where they were not just trying to run necessarily. They would run for sure if they had a chance. But when they got in a half-court offense situation, they actually ran some plays. There was like give and goes, and there was just stuff that you saw that you knew wasn't there before. So I think Rodney Terry did a really outstanding job with his team. Texas announced today, and I think they actually announced yesterday, but there was a press conference today to announce Rodney Terry as the next head coach at the University of Texas for men's basketball. He signed a 5-year deal. I think it's a $15 million deal. So congratulations to him. Now we got to talk about, what can he do in the portal to sort of fill some of those gaps? Because we got some guys that are leaving, and they were really important guys. We'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. Overall thoughts for the 2022 season. I think most Texas fans coming into this season realized that the roster was there. Everybody was had a lot of faith in Chris Beard and his ability. Obviously, he took a Texas Tech team to the championship game just a few years before. So I think most Texas fans thought this has the potential to be a really special year. And then obviously the whole Chris Beard incident and firing, which, by the way, again, I think that really kind of derailed Tyrese Hunter's season, or at least got him off track for a little bit. He really started to struggle and almost looked, to me, he almost looked like he just didn't want to be there in certain games. And all that sort of occurred at the same time. So I just feel like there had to be something there about, psychologically that bothered him about that whole Chris Beard deal. But they were able to push through that. They were able to play well in the Big 12. And again, they stumbled sort of late in the Big 12 when they had the opportunity right there in their fingers, right there in their hands to go ahead and win the Big 12 regular season title. But they didn't let that get them. They went into the Big 12 tournament and they rolled right through it. And they blew out Kansas for the second time in 7 days to win that Big 12 tournament championship. And, man, they looked – those two games against Kansas, I think for me, was the point where I said, man, like this team has the ability to make a deep run, and we might end up doing something really special this year. Then they move into the NCAA tournament. And overall, man, I think, losing in the Elite Eight sucks. I really, especially the way they lost, when I think all Texas fans are sitting there with 10 minutes left, and we're seeing the team battle. We're seeing them struggle, but we're seeing them battle, and they're able to figure out ways to make baskets to keep that 13-point lead that they built, keep it somewhat close to that. And I think, 10 points went kind of back and forth a little bit. They would get a 10-point lead. Miami would eat into it a little bit. Then they'd get a 10-point lead back. And then all of a sudden, like, just the parking brake went on and they could not score. They got crazy with the ball. They started turning the ball over. There was just bad defensive position. It just really fell apart. So for a Texas fan watching that, you start going, man, are they about to lose this game? And it just continued and continued and continued. And, man, it was really sucky, really tough loss because they could very easily be getting ready for the Final Four right now. But, again, I think they met expectations. They came into the tournament as a 2 seed. They probably could have been a 1 seed, especially when you consider what happened to all the 1 seeds. But definitely a 2 seed, and they made it to the Elite Eight, which is, if you're a 1 or a 2 seed, that should be your goal, make it to the Elite Eight. If you're a 1 seed, your goal should be to make it to the Final Four. So I feel like they met those expectations. Yeah, but again, just a really tough loss. And I'm not even a huge basketball fan. I mean, I watch Texas basketball because it's the Texas Longhorns, and I get excited when they win, and I try to pretend I know what I'm talking about when they lose. But it's not the same to me as a football game. Like, I will never be as devastated about a basketball game as I would be about a football game, for example. So what's interesting, though, is my wife, man. After that game, my wife was really bummed out, and I haven't really seen that side of her about collegiate athletics. I've seen her get that way about the Dallas Cowboys, but I've never seen her be that way about collegiate athletics. So I think she might have been excited about trying to take a trip down to Houston for the Final Four. But anyway, they let it slip through their hands. It's the way it goes, man. Early look at these 2023, 2024 Hardwood Horns. There's a lot of departures. You got Marcus Carr, who scored 603 points, averaged 15.9 a game. Jabari Rice, 494 points, 13 points a game. Timmy Allen, 367 points, 10.5 points a game. Christian Bishop, 249 points, 6.6 points a game. That's 58% of the entire offensive production for this year's Texas team gone in just 4 guys. There are some notable returners. Arterio Morris, 175 points, 4.6 points a game. And I think he really struggled. He had a couple of games early in the season where he shot really well, and he was able to do some. He's an amazing athlete. You don't see it a lot on the court, just because he doesn't get himself in those positions very often. And I think some of that could just be experience. Some of it could be confidence. But man, when he's an explosive type athlete. He had some games early on this season where he looked really, really good. Like, this dude is a legit 5-star. And then for the most of the season, he struggled shooting the ball. And he never really took it upon himself to try to take over a game from the point guard position. But I think he's that type of player. And later on down the stretch this season, we started to see that some of that shooting come back a little bit, and we started to see a little bit of confidence in him. I think he can be a really great player for Texas. Tyrese Hunter coming back. He'll be a junior, 392 points, 10.5 a game. He had a good season despite the fact that there was a stretch there where he just didn't look right. Again, he's another guy that started off super hot and then kind of eased up a little bit. And then, I think he started to get it a little bit towards the end of the Big 12 tournament. We started to see beginning of the year Tyrese Hunter. One question I have about him, and this may be a crazy question, I'm going to ask it anyway. Is he like a transfer candidate? He transferred out of Iowa State after his freshman year, after having a really great freshman year. I think he came to Texas probably, I don't know what the percentage is, but I bet it's a lot Chris Beard. And then Chris Beard's not here anymore. Obviously, you have to sit out a year if he did transfer. But I don't know. I don't know. I just have a weird feeling about Tyrese Hunter, like he might not be with the team next year. Brock Cunningham announced he's coming back, senior forward, 173 points, 4.6 a game. He's not a huge offensive threat, but that guy is a good rebounder. He's kind of like your glue guy, and he's a pest, man. He's like he's like the collegiate, clean-cut version of Dennis Rodman. He's always messing with people, always willing to be physical. Obviously not as talented as Dennis Rodman was in the NBA, but just that type of player. And then a couple that, we don't really know about at this point, but have the opportunity. They're available to come back. They still have eligibility to come back. Dylan Dessou, he had 318 points, 8.8 points a game. He averaged almost 15 points a game since the end of the regular season, which was double his average for the regular season. Is this guy an NBA guy or is he another season guy? I don't really know. I kind of feel like the NBA values length and athleticism and almost doesn't necessarily care about production as much. You see it all the time. You see these guys that don't produce a lot that end up, they're 1 year in college. Excuse me. They go one and done. They don't produce a lot, but then they make it to the NBA. And I think the NBA and the college game are just so wildly different that that athleticism comes through in the NBA. So, and he's really not that guy, which is not to say that he's not athletic, but he's definitely not like a Dylan Mitchell type guy. And he doesn't have that same type of build and that type of length and that type of athleticism. I think Dylan Dessou will end up coming back for his senior year, I believe it'll be. Dylan Mitchell, we just talked about him. Is he a one-and-done guy? He had 165 points, 4.3 a game. A lot of people think he's a first-rounder. He definitely has the athleticism and the length that the NBA likes. I just don't know if he did enough offensively to garner that. I don't know. I mean, defensively, he's a good shot blocker, a good rebounder. If you throw him the ball on an alley-oop, he's going to catch it and dunk the shit out of it. But just just not any offensive game other than that, really. So I don't know. Dylan Mitchell will be kind of an interesting one to see. I personally don't feel like he did enough to be a first rounder, but I'm not an NBA GM, and I'm not even a pseudo NBA GM. I'm not even like a fake. I could be an NBA GM, but I have a regular job person. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with Dylan Mitchell. Let's suppose all those guys come back. That's a pretty good nucleus, and it's definitely an experienced group. And they've got 2 good recruits coming in, 2 5-star guys that signed, as well as whatever Rodney Terry can do in the transfer portal. I heard rumor they're talking to one of the point guards or one of the guards out of Rice. So he had a lot of good scoring this year. He's a volume type guy, shoots a lot of shots. His percentages aren't that great, but he scores a lot of points. And he's a really good rebounder, apparently, for a 6'3" guard. So I don't know. There's guys out there that Rodney Terry could find, pull in, mix them with this nucleus of players, and they might have another good run this year. I saw something on the internet, and I didn't realize this about Miami. Miami lost their top 2 scorers last year off that Elite 8 team, and they were able through the transfer portal and just some experienced guys that had been there to go to the Final Four the next year. So you can do it. Especially in the transfer portal era, especially with NIL, you can get guys put together and really quickly, get a team put together that has that type of potential. My predictions for the rest of the tournament, I think UConn is going to beat Miami. I think UConn and Miami's guards are comparable, but I think that big man for UConn is going to be way too much for anything Miami has. Miami's not a big team in the front court, and this kid is big. He's powerful. He's athletic. Can't remember his name. Saw him play. Really good player. I think that UConn is just going to be too much for them. And if UConn can get the 3-point shooting going like they have been, I don't know that Miami can even keep that game close. I think Miami's one chance is exactly what they did to Texas, pushing the pressure out to the edge and hoping that those big guys can do something with Miami or with UConn's big guy. But I really think UConn's gonna win that game. I think Florida Atlantic's gonna beat San Diego State. I don't know why. I had to pick, so don't beat me up too bad about that. I mean, how many people have watched Florida Atlantic play all season and how many people have watched San Diego State play all season? Be honest with yourselves. Almost none of you. And matter of fact, most of you probably haven't seen them play at all. I've seen them play very, very few minutes. So I have no idea who's going to win that game. I'm going to pick Florida Atlantic because I think it's cool. Actually, and their record is really good. They haven't lost that many games this year. Of the teams that are left, I think they've probably lost the least games. It's like 3 or 4 games, I think, maybe 5 that they've lost. In the championship, I'm going to take UConn over Florida Atlantic. I said going into this second weekend of the tournament that I thought UConn was playing the best basketball out of anybody, and they didn't do anything in their Sweet 16 game to dissuade me of that. So I think UConn's going to end up winning it. If that's not who wins it, I think it's Miami, because whoever wins between Miami and UConn, I think, is going to win the championship. I think those are the 2 best teams clearly in the tournament. But that's why they call it March Madness. You never know what is going to happen. Join us for the bullpen later this week. We're going to talk about Texas and their sweep over number 14 Texas Tech. We'll talk about the game tonight down in College Station. Texas A&M sort of fallen from grace a little bit. Started the season ranked very highly. They're not even in the top 25 anymore. But A&M has taken 3 of the last 5 from Texas, I believe. And then we'll do From the Cheap Seats. That's going to be our football name, our football series. We'll talk about spring football, 2024 recruiting, and 3 reasons why Texas could be better in the SEC than they were in the Big 12. Subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Find me on TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook at Horn Takes. Email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com. all your questions, comments, criticisms, concerns. I love them all. Hook 'em.